Continuing our look at Lincoln cent varieties worth looking for, now with 1972. And there are quite a few for this date, so let's dive straight in. Starting with some of the more obscure ones, we have a rare Class 8 or tilted hub doubled coin that displays best in the form of doubling on the date of the coin. Looking for an additional bar above the base of the number 2, this is the most prominent feature, though notching can also be spotted on some coins to the tail of the 9 and the bottom left of the 7 as well. The auction record for this coin was set in 2024 when the finest known for the type was sold at auction in a PCGS slab with the grade of MS67 red for an astounding $3,262.50. Our next variety for 1972 is identified in the Cherry Picker's Guide as FS108 and is an example of classic Class 1 hub doubling, with medium rotation in a clockwise orientation. If it wasn't for the main variety for this year, then this would be a much more popular coin, but as it is overshadowed somewhat. Truly fantastic doubling can easily be spotted displaying towards the left of the letters of "In God We Trust." Now, at this point, it is worth mentioning that a coin in an earlier die state would be more marketable, as the doubling is seen as much more crisp, but in a later die state, it can be a bit soft or mushy, as seen on this example here. Now, both these coins are MS66 red, by the way. It's just that the die state itself is the difference. Although, again, to be fair, the grade of the coin itself shouldn't really have much of an impact on diagnosing or identifying the variety. And then the letters of Liberty should be doubled towards the south, with the L, the I, and the B being the most prominent in this regard. And then the date as well shows some nice signs of doubling, although here it displays mostly its additional thickness, with no real separation lines to speak of. High-end examples of this variety can typically sell for a few $100s, with this MS64 red example from NGC having sold at auction in 2025 for $312. Our next variety to look for, then, is the virtual mirror image of the previous one. It is, again, an example of rotated hub doubling, but this time the initial rotation took place in a counterclockwise orientation, where the doubling is now displaying towards the right side of the letters of "In God We Trust." And the effects of this can be seen across every single letter, even in a case where the coin is in a much later die state. Although in such a case the letters may only appear to be fat or display additional thickness instead of having clear separation lines. So just keep that in mind. Although, and again, due to the nature of the doubling, grade isn't really that important for identification purposes, although naturally a higher grade coin would be worth more. Liberty, in turn, is then also doubled, this time to the top north of the letters, with the first 4 letters or so being more prominent than the latter 3. There is also doubling towards the date, although it is not as immediately obvious at first glance, as it presents in the form of additional thickness to the numbers, especially the top flag of the 7 and the base of the 2. Comparing it to a normal coin from the same issue makes the difference a lot more clearly apparent. Now, interestingly, and I should stress that this is not a primary diagnostic point, but it can be useful for authentication purposes, as the variety is known to have a small diagonal die gouge just below the designer's initials of VDB that does fade as the die state of the coin advances. In 2023, we saw a coin graded as MS66 Red that was sold at auction in a PCGS lab for a total sum of $1,462.50. Alright, so next up is probably the least sought after variety on this list, because the doubling just is not that impressive when compared to some of the other coins. For the most part, what we want to look for is doubling towards the left of all of the letters of In God We Trust. Again, grade doesn't really make that much of a dent when searching for this variety, but I do find that the U in Trust is a pretty reliable touchstone for the variety, even when details get a bit mushy. Now, an interesting point of contention I'd like to draw attention to is the prevalence of strike doubling, or what's more commonly referred to as machine or mechanical doubling, in this particular era of the mint, which is exactly why I chose this example of the coin, as it has both true hub doubling and the false strike doubling on the same coin. So just be aware of that possibility when searching. One of the best known ways to reliably authenticate this variety is actually found on the reverse of the coin, where a fairly developed die crack is found on column number 1 of the memorial building, running nearly vertically in the center of the column. Here we have an example of the variety that was sold at auction in 2023 from the Stephenville collection, graded as MS65 Red, which realized $204. The FS105 variety is definitely the least impressive and most difficult to spot of the various noted varieties for this year. This is due to the very slight nature of the doubling, making it easy to miss. Here, the doubling presents itself not in the dramatic manner as the other coins featured, but instead only as slight separation lines, seen primarily on the letters of In God We Trust, where it displays towards the right of the letters. A genuine example should typically also display numerous crisscrossing die scratches just below the letters of Liberty. Value for this coin can also be a point of contention, as outliers like this MS66 Red coin from PCGS was sold in 2023 for an outstanding amount of $2,256 at public auction, which could create a distorted representation of true value, though a more typical price would be only a few $100s in comparison. Without any doubt in my mind, the scarcest variety, though by far not the most valuable, is the 104 type. The doubling is similar to that seen in the previous example, but here it is significantly more pronounced and stronger. All of the letters of In God We Trust are doubled with moderate spread, displaying towards the right of the letters, with the letters of Liberty also sharing in the spoils, this time in a more noticeable manner. The L of Liberty is the most noticeable on this regard, with the base of the letter doubled to the north. The date too is affected, though faint separation lines and light additional thickness is really the best you can hope for here. And in a latter die state or grade, the prior feature tends to fade in any event. Now, interestingly, the coin's scarcity is likely explained by the noticeable and fast advancing cuds that are also so often seen on the rim of the coin next to the letters of Liberty, as this points to a likely point of catastrophic failure for the working die, limiting its production run to only a relatively small number of coins for the issue. Due to the sheer scarcity of this variety, it's not unfamiliar with outlandish prices, but the auction record for this variety made even those seem pedestrian by comparison, when a PCGS graded MS66 red example was sold at auction in 2023 for a lavish $21,811. Now, we get to the really good stuff. The FS103 is a classic Class 1 doubled coin, with a strong clockwise rotation on the second squeezing of the hub. The only difference between this and the main FS101 variety is the severity of the doubling, the best example of the fact that the date is not as clearly doubled here. Some additional thickness and slight separation lines, especially on the 9 and the 2, but in a lower grade example of the coin, even that is likely to fade or vanish altogether. So that's not really where I would put too much focus early on. The letters of Liberty, however, are more telling, with the doubling seen more clearly on the horizontal sections of the letters that have them, like the L, B, E, R, and T, displaying stronger towards the rim of the coin. And this is where the die state becomes more important, as in a later die state, these two can become more ambiguous as the letters become mushy or soft, regardless of grade, though the L and the B remain the last to fade in most cases. But even in an advanced or later die state or a lower grade, the letters of In God We Trust remain the telltale signature of this variety, with clear doubling displaying towards the left of every single letter on display without question. And that is especially true for the letters of trust, where the U itself is almost completely doubled in its own right. In 2023, a PCGS graded MS67 red example was sold at auction for the closing amount of $2,420. Which then brings us neatly to the second strongest variety for the 1972 penny, and the numismatic equivalent of perennially being the bridesmaid and never quite the bride. Despite extremely strong doubling to be found on this coin, it simply pales in comparison to the main variety that we'll get to next. This represents the strongest doubling on the letters of Liberty that we have seen in this issue so far, with the entire word doubled dramatically, though, of course, the doubling is stronger on the letters closer to the rim, and even in a later die state, the same does remain true. The doubling on the letters of In God We Trust, especially the In God We section, can be affected by an advanced die state though. Even if it simply becomes less distinct, it should remain largely still intact and discernible, with all the letters displaying strong spread towards the right side of the letters, making it quite unmistakable. And in 2023, a stellar example, graded as MS66 Plus Red, was sold at auction for the closing sum of $2,165. And then for the rock star of the group, a single variety for the issue that completely overshadows every other one for the issue, and easily a top 10 variety for the series as a whole, if not really top 5 even. The doubling is so strong that it can be spotted with the naked eye, and an exemplary instance of rotated hub doubling, only to be outdone by the 1955, 69S, and 58 varieties of the same class. The date has every number doubled strongly towards the top. The letters of Liberty achieve full separation of the base of the L, the B, and the horizontal parts of the E and top of the R, with strong doubling on every other letter as well. But the letters of In God We Trust are simply in a league of their own, where every single letter achieves full separation, with the doubling displaying towards the left as the rotation of the second squeezing took place towards the clockwise direction during the hubbing process. And prices for this exceptional variety can vary wildly, but in 2020, a PCGS-graded MS67 red coin was sold at auction for $3,768. Now, in addition to that, there is also another variety coin to look for. This time, not in rolls or pocket change, but in your 1972 proof sets, making this a prime cherry-picking opportunity for the diligent variety collector. Doubling here is best viewed on the letters of "In God We Trust." Most of the doubling displays on the form of separation lines and slight additional thickness to all of the lettering, with a similar effect also seen on the letters of Liberty as well. Here you can clearly see the effect on the base of the L, and the letter B is another good example of the same. And here in 2023 we saw a PCGS graded Proof 66 red example of this coin sold at auction for the sum of $1,020 by final call. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch a video about the 1971 varieties next, right here. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.